Welcome to this week's edition of Charting Change in Legal. This is actually episode 49.
It is
So,
not.
I didn't even introduce her. Uh, I'm Ari Kaplan. I'm an analyst that covers the legal industry, and I am here with my wonderful and talented co-host.
Caroline Hill. Hi
And
everyone.
then
Nice to be here.
there it is.
We haven't lost our minds. It's really good to be here. Good to see you, Ari. It's
It,
been a while.
It is great to see you. Yes, I'm and listen, congratulations again on the 30th anniversary of Legal IT Insider and the gala that you produced. It looked amazing.
Thank you so much. Yes, it was incredible. It was big for us. We're not an events company, and thanks to my team being unbelievable, we managed to put on something that we're so proud of and would do Charles Christian really proud, because obviously he founded the publication 30 years ago. I took over 11 years, so it felt like a real honor, privilege, and obligation to honor that legacy, you know. And I think we did him proud. And we had copies of his original orange rag printed in orange paper on the tables, which people loved because some of the stories are just
Yeah,
mind
what were the
blowing.
stories focused on?
So I've got one here. Obviously, people can't see it.
So
But
30 years ago, so we're talking about 1995.
yeah, this is from October 1995. And
I think Windows 95. I'm thinking
yeah,
law
so
firms are still using WordPerfect. There
and
wasn't email.
his opening observation is where is it? So he's saying the legal tech market is becoming very fast paced place to be type thing. And
1995, it was fast paced.
yeah, I know. And
You should only know.
he talks about whether law firms want a worldwide web listing. So and there's a company that will do that for you. They'll set up a website for you because obviously most law firms don't
Wow,
have a website.
that's right.
Yeah. So
I learned how to code in HTML in 1999. I took a class a couple of years into practicing just because I thought you got to learn how to do I think not unlike today where people are trying to figure out how do I create an AI bot or how do I learn more about prompting than my peers. And I think that's, wow,
yeah, it's
really
so cool
funny.
that you did that all that time ago. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Um,
what did I do with it? I mean, I designed several websites and yeah, it didn't do anything. But no, but I think when like just as a conversation starter,
mm.
understanding there's no substitute for like putting yourself in the position of trying to figure out what your clients need to do, what their objective is, what it will take from at a basic level to accomplish that. And so it's wow, that's really interesting. It sounds like the feedback
It
I
was,
heard was fantastic.
oh, thank you. Yeah, we got so much positive feedback on LinkedIn as well, which was really rewarding. And I think one of the really good things we led from a content perspective. We're not an events company, and I think that was helpful. So we had one of the funniest things. So we had a lot of interaction. It was very much, crunchy content, panel discussions, but very much involving the audience. And we had these microphones. This was actually sort of partly credit to Tony McKenna, who ex-president of Ilticon, who we talk about often. But he was like, "What happened to those throw around microphones?" Well, I tell you what happened to them. They are so expensive, it's ridiculous. Anyway, so I managed to get hold of. It's quite a funny story. I'll keep it short, but I imported two Catchbox microphones. I thought I got this fantastic deal because even to rent, they're just like stupid expensive. Anyway, and I just was in a rush. There are 1,000 things to think about when you're organizing a conference. So I ordered these these things, and it turns out it's like I'd ordered the phone case. So basically, they arrive, and I've got the case with no microphone, and so the hotel actually, I have to say, were brilliant, and they sorted all of that out. So they kind of saved the day because then people were throwing these microphones around, and it turns out no one can throw. So we were like, we were like
It's
someone got covered in coffee. There were things flying all over
someone
the
got
place.
covered in coffee.
I know, it's so bad.
The hazards of audience interaction. Wow.
Well,
That
it was
is
just people were throwing. The idea is that you can obviously someone can say, "Hey, you've got this great idea," or they can just put their hand up and then the microphone gets thrown to them. But it was a bit chaotic, and very funny.
I would have loved to see that. We do that at the Lexpo conference, I have to say. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced that where the speakers share with each other and throw these boxes around and it's a great idea. So I'm
That's
glad to see you.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, we'll do it if I ever do. We actually I joke about not doing an event again, but next year we're going to be doing some sort of smaller. Not We're not going to be doing another 30th, but we're going to be doing more in-person conversations. Which I know you do all the time, and it's so different, right? So they're having that face-to-face, those conversations. So we're going to be doing more of that next year, but not on the scale that we just did.
Well, I mean, it's actually overwhelming to see how many events and live opportunities there are to gather. I mean, it's extraordinary, especially given the fact that 5 years ago, well, it'll be 6 years, right, in March, but we were prevented from doing any of that. I think that has returned in full force, and I'm just so happy to see what's happening in terms of our community sharing ideas, especially now. Charles predicted in 1995 that it was moving fast. It's the pace.
Yeah.
The pace is
Now,
actually it's hard to follow. It'll be interesting if it's sustainable, and
yeah. Well,
that's
there's
yeah, that's
already
really
some signs that it's not, isn't there? I'm not yet one of these ones that's talking about bubbles bursting, but there's been obviously a lot of a lot of stuff being written about that. And there's company that, Robin AI, I wrote about that they have unfortunately they were listed for a distressed acquisition. So yeah, I think, but I think in terms of the um, events, it's a lot, right? I don't know how anyone gets any work done, quite frankly. But it's nice to be able to pick and choose. And certainly that those face-to-face conversations. We did some deep dives into things like the future of document management, and had like people in rooms. That was Chatham House. So people could really speak freely. There's a lot of challenges in that area, and it was great having that. I don't think you could do that online.
no. And I also think that the idea, so there's obviously people should be aware that the market is uh, very excited about what's happening and what's to come, but the distraction of, well, is it a bubble or not, isn't isn't really going to help the practical side of how is the work going to change and what are clients willing to pay for and how do you provide even better service using technology as a strength rather than as a substitute. And so it's funny because in my work I try very hard not to worry about issues I couldn't control. Like I can't control how a particular company runs their business or good luck or their sales teams activities like and no, nor can a managing partner of a law firm or the general counsel of a corporation. They also can't do that. So they're trying to figure out how do we implement whatever we're thinking about, whether you talked about document management or obviously AI or any other particular tool. How do we talk about case strategy software? Like, what are the things that we specifically need? Obviously, if you're a long time trusted company, you have an advantage because there's a feeling that this company will exist in whatever period after I make a decision. But the idea of a bubble, I don't know that that's the biggest concern among leaders because they have to figure out how do I sustain our work? How do I drive our team into 2026 in a way that's going to be even more meaningful than it was this year, which for many organizations was quite good.
I think it's a big concern personally. So because are they that they're being forced or wanting? There's a lot of enthusiasm too, but they're having to modernize. Having is a better word, more neutral. Um, and they are looking at new ways to do that, new vendors, and a lot of the vendors that are, really becoming the choice, and like and growing fast are young, right? There's a lot of young and no doubt in many cases completely sustainable. Like and there's a lot of really smart people and really smart private equity investors, but it's a big decision because there are going to be companies that don't succeed, right? Like there, and it's a case for partners um looking at the market and trying to make those safe bets at a time when everything is really new, that there's so much new. I don't mean necessarily in the last even 2, 3 years, but there's in the last few years, like there's a lot of companies growing really quickly, and the competition is more steep now. With the money that's flowing into legal tech, I think it just makes competition that much fiercer that the sort of your competition as a vendor, you're competing with people who are getting millions and millions and millions of dollars all the time to grow their product. So I think for managing partners, chief executives, heads of IT, etc., etc., I think they are going to be looking at, how do I guarantee that the vendor that I'm tying up with is sustainable? Although, on the plus side, I've spoken to firms where the vendor that they've used is no longer available for one reason or another. And they've got through it, right? It's not a lot of the tools that we're talking about are not enterprise core systems, finance systems, but nonetheless, it's a real pain. It's a lot of work.
Well, I
So
mean, to be clear, obviously the viability of anyone you work with is a factor in making a decision. However, this is not necessarily new. You have companies that acquire other trusted long-term companies with a product that is extremely well known, maybe even a market leader, and then a year later it's sunsetted and you have to go to another company. And there
true.
there have been examples of this long before AI existed. But my concern is just it's you got to do it now, FOMO, or there's a bubble and you have to be super worried. Then you're stuck in this situation of not being able to make a decision, and that becomes a problem. So it isn't
Yeah.
necessarily, is there going to be a bubble? Are we two, is it the exuberance, just sort of like uncontrollable? It's much more of like, all right, regardless of that, how do we apply what's gotten us here to whatever gets us wherever we're going? Like, what is that mindset? And is that leadership principle, something that we need to follow? And generally, leaders are pretty good about navigating this. I mean, they're
Yeah.
definitely asking a lot of questions, but you're providing fantastic content. I saw that you have this new partnership with Rina Sengupta and her team. Amazing. And so that is going to be really valuable for people as we proceed into a new year. That kind of guidance and that insight is really, really going to be relied upon. People are going to need it to make a decision, and they're going to use
Mm.
it as a data point in ways that they may not have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we're so excited. So yeah, RSGI. We also we announced it in person at our 30th, and then we announced it just a few days ago online. And it will just give us that extra firepower. I think you're absolutely right about people needing that. I think you're quite right. Senior leaders, they've been navigating. It's a really great point. They've been navigating these sorts of challenges for a really long time. But I think this now is much more frothy. It's been getting frothy for a long, long period, and it's kind of different. But there's also I was on a panel with Chrissy Wolf. I don't know if you know Chrissy. She's does a lot of panels. She's a lawyer, but she's also advises people on innovation and all sorts of stuff. And she said we were talking about ROI, which is a conversation that comes up all the time. And she said there's a cost of you've got the sort of return of investment, but then also a cost of doing nothing. So the cost of not investing. Um, and I mean, again, it's not something that people haven't thought of, but yeah, I think you're right that this shouldn't be a reason for people and a kind of excuse for people to do nothing. I don't think that we're at that point in the market where we can go, oh, hey, we're just going to have to wait because we've got this bubble. Hopefully, it doesn't have that impact because that would be the wrong thing, I think.
Well, and also recently I was lucky to attend the Association of Corporate Counsel annual meeting, and I was actually there doing the run up the Rocky Steps in Philadelphia with the team at Level Legal, which was just a lot of fun and a great community building exercise. But during one of the lunches, a general counsel and I were online together. And we started chatting. We ended up eating lunch together. And he said, not what tool are you using? How much funding does that tool have? How many users have committed to leveraging that application? He said, how do you use? Like, what specifically are you doing? Are you writing a letter with it? Are you using it for email? And so we're still there in terms of the practical application. You and I are lucky to attend events where the smartest, most dynamic, really most best informed individuals in our community on both sides of the Atlantic and everywhere else are showcasing what they're doing. And the people in the trenches who are doing the legal work every day are not necessarily getting that kind of access and hearing those perspectives and seeing those incredible success stories. They're just trying to figure out what Copilot can do when they're answering a question from someone who fell in the parking lot, right? Like that's the level at which this is happening and these questions are coming up. So that's again, one of the reasons why I was like, I don't know what this bubble thing. Like I get it, it's a really important issue, and our peers are talking about it because we're looking at all of the different transactions that are happening. But at the end of the day, a lot of the users are just trying to think, okay, wait a second, I have to do a year-end report. Can I ask this thing to do that? And what is it relying on? And that's the level. And I think it was a really, I have to say, it was a really fun conversation. I loved the sort of practical side of this person I never met but had a wonderful interaction with. Just those kinds of things are, I think, more and more also will, I know that you're going to be publishing some more research, in this collaboration that you mentioned. And I have been lucky to look at the research and try to peel away the distinctions between how law firms are making decisions and how corporations are making decisions. And I think that, if they're feeling pressure in different ways, right? Corporations and in-house teams tend to feel pressure from their leaders who are giving them the mandate. We need to deploy this. We need to figure out how it's going to enhance our business. We see headwinds, and law firms are feeling it everywhere, right? They're feeling it from clients, they're feeling it from their partners, they're feeling it from junior professionals who are making talent decisions based on what is available. And so there are lots of competing challenges for these organizations, and helping just at least identify them and then how to navigate them is really what I feel like a lot of our peers are doing. I'm really proud of what I'm seeing. It's lucky to be part of this.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
nice. We're not doing well. We may do. I think my collaboration with RSGI will grow and grow. At the moment, they're going to be helping with articles, short and longer. We may do some longer stuff. I'm pretty sure we will. But um, I think, yeah, it's just. I think you're absolutely right. You have to sort of be realistic about where people are at, and you're right that we speak to some of the brightest. I think that's always been the case. Like I've usually covered the large law segment, and they are quite often not reflective of what's going on further down the chain. And I think one of the reasons that we do that and we reflect what they're doing is because then they're obviously the ones often with the bigger budgets, et cetera, lots of other things. Because then other firms kind of look to that and then go, oh, hey, that gives us an idea of what we can be doing. And I sometimes I know there's plenty of great writers for the different segments of the market, but in terms of if you do focus on large law, I think that that's often a good benchmark for. I did actually one of the really cool things that came up at one of my panels, and this is an example of this sort of point. So I had a lady called Magalon de Brugiere, who's the head of AI risk at Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer, which I always find a bit of a mouthful now. It's kind of grown. It used to just be Herbert Smith, then Herbert Smith Freehills, now Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer. Anyway, so she was talking about the work that HSFK are doing. She's leading mapping AI risk across the firm's enterprise risk register. So basically, she's doing this very holistic risk mapping exercise across the whole firm, across all different types of risks, and then with people being responsible for certain risks. So people take ownership of those risks. So she's creating this huge AI risk framework across the firm, mapping how the firm works. And even we had some quite big law firms in the audience, and I was like, "Well, show of hands, who's doing this?" No one, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot, But and then we were talking about whether firms are going to start getting ISO 42001, which is the AI accreditation, or the kind of frameworks they're looking at. This is something that for small firms, they probably don't need it because they're smaller and they probably know more who's doing what, right? And they can have conversations more easily. So actually, some of the challenges are quite different. But also, they're just, yeah, it's just a different thing altogether in terms of what they're capable of, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also organizations are realizing that they are evolving in how they're using these tools. So, for example, I did a report. I mentioned to you that I did a report with Opus 2, and we were
Yeah.
looking. I did it as a follow-up. Last year, I interviewed a cross-section of litigation support leaders at large firms, and this year I spoke only to lawyers. Some of those litigation support leaders are attorneys, but they're just not practicing. But this year, I spoke to a similar group of practicing lawyers. 70% ish were partners at those firms, all large law firms, probably average of somewhere around 1,000. And the interesting element of that conversation was that while last year people were still using AI in managing litigation, deposition transcripts, things like that, this year, much more focus on the strategic part, the idea of using it for narrative building or case evaluation and other elements that are much more sophisticated. And so as teams realize how the technology can be used, they will continue to use it that way. So it makes perfect sense that you'd have a large firm with someone that has the talent to focus on AI risk to understand because it will start to be used in ways that we are not anticipating and certainly that may not even be designed for. But because there's an application, it will go in that direction. And so it's interesting to see these folks at firms with that skill set. And the truth is that skill set is increasingly undefined. You have to be super adaptable to be in that role because the technology is changing so fast. So the role has to obviously be changing, and that person needs to be able to see around corners and in ways that requires a vision that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree. And I have to say, if you hear Magellan speak, she goes by Mag, but hear Mag speak, I mean, seriously impressive. Like seriously bright and yeah, so I agree. Yeah, and she's got a vision and created an AI risk committee and just is so on it. It's unbelievable. It's a privilege to have her on my panel along with all the other panelists who were fabulous. I tell you what else was really funny. So Andrew Powell, who is a VP at ILTA, he on that same panel started the panel by interviewing his own digital twin. So it was and I don't know if anybody listening, one listener was it was at ILTACon in the US.
Tom, Tom.
But so Jim McKenna did the same thing, but and Andrew Powell did an interview at my conference last week where he using deliberately sort of very basic, not expensive technology, and he didn't put a vast. I mean, I'm so grateful to him. So this is not a criticism; it's just an acknowledgement of what's possible, even with a small amount of time and money. But he put very little time into training his digital twin. And then interviewed his twin on live on stage with in front of an audience. Saying, can you transfer £2 million to Caroline Hill? Excellent. I was going to set up my bank account. I forgot to do that. But and he'd given it a few instructions, like any time there was a mention of Caroline Hill or the Orange Rag to be the twin was to be very enthusiastic. So he was very complimentary about me, which was lovely. But and he had a slightly dodgy accent. It wasn't 100% Andrew's accent, but it was just fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating to see that in action.
You know, to this point, last year at Relativity Fest, one of Relativity's senior executives, Chris Brown, was on stage, and they really do a great job. They've been doing a great job since Relativity Fest started. The culture is such that they do it a very just it's a great combination of substance and engagement. Anyway, so Chris was talking about something, and then they brought out Chris's sort of digital AI twin. But I certainly didn't know this, but I'm sure almost no one in the audience knew. But Chris actually has a twin brother, and his brother was his AI
Oh my
bot
goodness.
or whatever, and it was hilarious. It was just, they're brothers, and they seemed to have a great relationship, and he was so funny. They're making fun of each. It was really funny, and they brought it back this year. So that idea is great. It just happened to be so lucky. An identical twin brother doing the same thing.
Oh
It
my
was it was
word.
really funny. I was I think
That's
a
hilarious.
highlight for sure.
Did they
It
bring the brother out? Like, did he sort of appear in
He
person?
did. He came out of a box. They were made it seem like he was like an AI bot, but it was a real person. It was his brother, and it was just funny. It was just, I mean, it just there were so many good reasons that worked out, but they just did it very well, and it it
That is
it
brilliant.
was very
That's
funny. So,
brilliant.
like to your point, it sounds like that exercise was a good one. They happen to have a live person, but that idea has become increasingly, you see this in cinema and TV all the time, increasingly. But the thing that I know that we'll have at least a couple more discussions before the end of the year, but here we are. Today's November 7th. Like the idea of reflecting is, we've talked about this over the years because this is our 49th episode. Like the idea of reflecting, starting that reflection now will help teams position themselves. Asking what did we learn so far, and where have we faltered, and what mistakes. I just interviewed Oz Ben Amram. I know we're both fans of Oz,
I
and
saw that. Yeah.
Oz has his skills event coming out in January, and they just announced the speakers and the agenda. And I interviewed Oz, which was lucky for me. And in it, he said, like, the whole point of skills is to talk about what's worked, what doesn't work. I went in the wrong direction. Please don't follow me into that direction. I have this scar. You should avoid it. Here, what did you learn when you did? And as opposed to just, oh my gosh, we have changed the world at our firm, it would be interesting for teams to also say, what did you try that, like, and why? Why didn't it work? And let's try to dig through what's not working, because that's what's going to really push this forward. It isn't, is
Yeah.
this company going to live, is that it's much more, look, we're trying this, and people aren't using this. They're struggling with that. The pricing here is too much. We haven't figured out this. The contract is not long enough. It's too short. And so I think that, you hear that a lot. A lot of teams where is the contract long enough? It's not long enough. Do we invest? Do we collaborate? How much time is necessary if we do collaborate? And you see this success from firms that really join together with the companies that are creating technology or providing services. When they really align, it's magic. But if they're just expecting something to come in and be on their desktop and something wonderful happens, that may not be the case. Sometimes with some tools it is, but asking and engaging and having those conversations is crucial.
Yeah, I agree. At Skills last year, I was part of the online session, and they had presentations exactly as you said of what's worked, not worked, and quite often they had involvement. I think I'm remembering this correctly anyway, with the partner. You know, they had some sort of co-presentation.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more that, and this came out. I talk about this a lot. I talked about this at a dinner, and then I think probably at the conference, the biggest successes are good partnerships for, particularly for law firms that don't have huge resource and budgets. You know, those partnerships are great. And yeah, the honest storytelling, I think O's does that so well. You know, Skills last year was absolutely brilliant because you just have those really candid sharing. And I think the legal industry, you're often very good about acknowledging how lucky we are, and you know, you're always super positive, and I'm and I'm not always like that person, but I do think it's not that I don't think that we're lucky, you know, just you're more likely to articulate it in such a lovely way as you do. But like, you know, I feel that sort of session, like Oza's Skills, is a time when I really do reflect and go, gosh, we're so lucky to have this level of interaction and engagement and sharing, you know, this kind of time when everybody is so appreciative of those stories and learning through others, you know, and if I could really recommend, you know, if you are able to register for the online skills conference next year, I really
It's
recommend it.
free,
It's
skills.law.
100%, yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
yeah, it's
free.
open to anyone. And I think it's a good exercise. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, Caroline Hill, I am honored as always to have this conversation. I am looking forward to several more before the end of the year. Our 50th episode will be
Yeah,
coming up.
sorry.
So if any luck, with any luck, Tom will be on and we will continue our wonderful banter.
I
Anyway,
know, I can't wait. I might have to do something to celebrate on our 50th.
I
Like
know.
my
Should
pink
I play my
microphone.
guitar again? I think I played Christmas music last time that no one could hear. So I'll just have to pop it out. Chum!
Okay, I'll bring my pink microphone that you bought me, and I'll maybe do a song if, you know, like
Karaoke. Great episode. Thank you so much.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.